Hello everyone. Thank you for sharing a few minutes of your attention with me during YPO's Net Zero Week. Today we're looking at this specific challenge. How can procurement people who are new to electric vehicles and EV charging cut a good deal as they cut their carbon emissions? I'm Cobb from Ubitricity, a company well known for squeezing EV charge points inside lampposts. Like this. Yes, that's a public EV charge point that can fully recharge your Tesla Model 3 overnight on the street while its driver is enjoying much precious time with the family, having dinner, and getting that much needed sleep. How's that for a neat trick? Speaking of tricks, our friends at the YPO have asked me to reveal a few tricks of the EV charging trade. So, I'm going to share a few tips that procurement people like you can use to get a good deal for your council when buying EV charge points for the communities that you serve and helping your council along its way to achieve a net zero emission future. Does that sound interesting? I certainly hope so. But before I dive into my top 3 tips, let's get one thing out of the way. If you've just been asked to begin a procurement process for EV charge points and it feels like you're totally out of your depth, that's fine. You know what? You're not alone. Electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging infrastructure are totally new topics for most people. After all, everyone is on a learning curve. Take a look at these numbers, for example. Pure electric cars have been sold in the UK for the last 10 years or so, but it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that EVs have become a fairly common sight on our roads. In fact, the total number of full battery electric vehicles of all makes on the UK roads only overtook the total number of Porsches on the road in September 2020. That accounts for about 163,000 vehicles, just in case you're wondering. The good news is the number of EVs is growing faster and faster. More battery electric vehicles have been sold in the 8 months since September 2020 than in the first 8 years after Nissan launched the Leaf here in the UK in 2011. That's well over 90,000 vehicles, again, just in case you're wondering. So, if you've suddenly been asked to buy public EV charge points, that real explosive growth in EV sales is the reason why. EVs are racing from niche to normal, which means more of your residents need to plug in and charge in public and are more than likely asking your council to make that amenity available. So, the question is, how do you actually go from newbie to ninja in this new topic? Well, I'm going to give you the 3 T's, not the Mr. T's, but 3 specific tips, and that is turn up, tune in, and talk to me. Turn up to events like this. After all, YPO has lined up a great panel of experts who have been in your shoes and are really willing to share their hard-earned wisdom. Secondly, tune in to watch and learn. Literally, there are some great EV channels on YouTube, from the well-known and entertaining Fully Charged to more niche and geeky Plug Life. And of course, talk to people in the EV trade like myself. After all, we have a wealth of experience to share, and if you speak to enough of us, you'll actually get a real good balanced view of things. At Ubitricity, we like sharing our insights, real practical insights based on how we actually see thousands of EV drivers using our thousands of charging points on a daily basis. So please do get in touch. As BT says, I'll be happy to talk. Okay, now let's focus on how to get a good deal. These are my 3 clear questions for you to ask. Is this still valid? Is this really what I want? And is this for real? So, I think it's time we explore them. Number 1, is this still valid? As you get into EV charging, you'll really need to question whether a lot of the conventional wisdom that you've acquired from your experience with regular combustion cars is still valid. Why? Because electricity and petrol are fundamentally different. So the way to get that energy into the vehicle can be fundamentally different too. EV charging doesn't have to replicate liquid refueling in a forecourt environment. So let's pause and think about this. Vehicles spend around 90% of their time sat around doing nothing. Well, that's a great time to refuel them. It means the majority of recharging can happen over several hours at low power while the car is parked instead of needing to drive to a refueling station. Now that's good for the battery. It's great for a renewable energy based grid and absolutely brilliant for drivers who like to sleep and pay a lot less for their refueling. Yes, I'm sorry to break it to you, but a lot of what you know about cars and fueling may be dangerous baggage when it comes to EV charging. As Yoda said to Luke, "Unlearn what you have learned, you must." Okay, so let's look at question number 2. Is this what I want? Asking for exactly what you want makes you feel confident, doesn't it? Being super specific shows you know what you're doing and is really helpful, isn't it? Well, not always. Not in new markets that are changing very quickly, and there are lots of different and new ways to achieve your goal, like electric vehicles and how to charge them. With EV charging, context really matters. Different tools work for different jobs, right? So understanding what type of charger works best for what kind of application is really vital to creating the right charging ecosystem for your community. That's why we talk about chargers in the way they fit around drivers' needs, as this graphic illustrates. It's not kilowatts for kilowatts' sake. So think broadly and don't put your blinkers on. Be outcome focused rather than specification focused when engaging with EV charging suppliers. Tell them what problem you're trying to solve and ask them to suggest how your outcome can be achieved in the best way for your council, your residents, and the environment. If your specification is too conventional and narrow, you really risk excluding alternative and great innovative solutions. So my advice to you is tap into the experience of those EV charging companies. Now, let's move on to a third and final question. So, is this for real? Now, there are lots of companies that want your business. Some will just about say anything in this world to make their offer look really attractive. And what do they honestly say about too good to be true offers? So my advice would be to question the assumptions behind all projections that are put your way. Don't just take them at face value. Ask, how did you get to this forecast? I'd also ask, what if those assumptions turn out differently? What risks are you then exposed to? The most common example of unrealistic forecasts is actually around utilisation levels and revenue shares. Now, I understand council budgets are under pressure and that EV charging infrastructure looks like a promising new source of gaining an income. Am I right? Well, the harsh reality is that the next few years is just a build-out phase. The primary goal now is putting in place enough public charging infrastructure and offering good value, prices and services to drivers to encourage more people to switch to EVs. That means there will often be an oversupply of charge points to electric vehicles. So, expecting every charge point to deliver their maximum amounts of electricity every day from day one is really unrealistic. Yet, we've seen some extremely ambitious forecasts based on maximum utilization levels, which really should be taken at face value. So my advice would be to do your due diligence on all forecasts from EV charging companies. In fact, double your due diligence on the most attractive proposals. And if you're not sure, give me a ring. Because if the economics are unrealistic, your charging partner will sooner or later run into deep trouble, leaving you with a really big mess to sort out. So that's really how procurement can help meet net zero targets. Prepare to unlearn and relearn. And to get the best from suppliers, make sure you describe your desired outcome and not a narrow specification list. And check what you've been promised is realistic. Really question those assumptions, especially the too good to be true offers. Well, unfortunately, that's all I have time for today. But I really hope you found that useful and interesting. And if you'd like to pick my brains further, then here are my contact details. Happy charging and thanks for your time. Goodbye.